Great. We're live. The first time actually that we start on the exact scheduled time, which is 11:10 at my place. Guys, I'm here with Mitch Russo. This guy is an absolute genius. We were just discussing before about this software that we're going to talk about a bit more, which is pretty much next level. Maybe a bit about Mitch is like he sold a software company that he started from scratch out of your garage, right? Like it turned into an 8-figure exit pretty much. You worked with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes. You pretty much created a 25 million plus business together, which is super impressive. You got nominated 2 times for, I think it's Inc. Business, Inc. Magazine Entrepreneur of the Year, which is insanely impressive. You wrote 2 books. One was called The Invisible Organization. I think it's an Amazon bestseller, right? And the second called Power Tribes. Is that also an Amazon bestseller or not yet?
Yeah, it was. It was when it was released.
Nice. Pretty much now he's on a mission to solve the age-old problem for coaches while enhancing their results, using his new coach practice management system called Client Folio. And then he also has this business where he helps them scale from 6, 7, 8 figures, maybe even all the way up to 9. Who knows? But Mitch, I'm incredibly excited to have you here because I was going through your stuff and I was like, wow, this guy seems to be one of those hidden geniuses that you don't normally see. But that's absolutely a killer behind the scenes. So excited to have you here. Thank you.
My pleasure, Colin. And again, I love the work you're doing as well. I love your meticulous process, of which many coaches should follow, because it will, as you know, by anything that you track, you can improve. And I think you're from what you've shown me, you're the master of that.
It's we just had a client that I'm going to interview next week, and he actually just got 3 clients from our system, and then he got 7 clients back to back from referrals. And I think that's a big part that people are missing, actually having a really good product. Like we were going through your product, and I was like, actually have a really good product, and people will talk about it, they will share it. And I think that's one of the missing keys right now, because everybody's just like marketing, and actually have a good product that gets results, and people actually talk about it. So that's great. Maybe to start off with, right? Like you start an 8-figure business from your garage. Like what was like the mindset, or like what went in? Why the hell did you do that? Like, what went through your mind? Like, because at that time, pretty much, I think not many people were doing that, I assume. Like, what went through your mind, and like, what were kind of the steps that you went through?
Well, when I started that business, I was about 28 years old, and I had been quite successful in other areas. I was a real estate investor, and I was buying multifamily units in Boston. And I would, in some cases, occupy them, and then sell them, rent them and sell them. So I'd done pretty well with that. The other thing that I also was doing was I was selling semiconductors to large companies as a sales rep. So I was able to build a very wonderful book of business. And at that age of 27 years old, in 1970-ish, I was kind of generating, closer to 1980. I was generating, like $34,000 a month in commissions back then, and it took a while to build that up. But the point I'm making is that I had socked away quite a bit of cash before deciding to make the business or start the business. And so that's really, in some ways, the thing that saved us, because everything takes longer than you think. We expected to be profitable. We were profitable almost right away because we had no expenses. We started it out of the house, basically out of my garage. And my partner and I, we didn't take salaries. We had some expenses, but selling 5 or 6 copies of our software at $99 a copy, believe it or not, kept us, afloat. And but we also knew that we had some depth of savings that if we needed to, we could invest in the company. And so really our first endeavor was to figure out who wants what we have. And we ran ads in big magazines like PC Magazine and discovered that not everybody wants our product, but certain types of people do. So those types of people, it turns out, were lawyers. So we then, and I'm compressing time a bit here, this happened over several months. We then focused on marketing just to lawyers, and we began to make slow but steady progress. And so this progress started with $30 classified ads in little newspapers, regional newspapers around the country that were aimed at the legal profession. And we would, like you with your spreadsheet, we would track every ad and every sale to determine whether or not those ads were working. So all we had to do was sell one copy of the software to make an ad pay. It was $99. The ads were $30 to $40. And then we had a whole spreadsheet filled with these different newspapers that we were advertising in. And we started to bring revenue up, and we started to sell 15 or 16 copies a week, which was incredible. But the big breakthrough for us came after many, many months of hard work on PR. And so what we did is we basically spent a lot of time, and I brought in an intern to help me, and we started connecting with the press and setting up interviews, phone calls to build relationships. I then went to a trade show in Las Vegas called Comdex. It's not around anymore. Comdex was a computer show. And so I went from booth to booth to booth with my little satchel filled with time-slip software. And over the course of 10 days, I covered almost 1 million square feet and gave out 100 copies of my software to anybody who I thought had a glimmer of being a partner or a joint venture partner or a PR partner. And it was exhausting. I came home with an empty bag and virtually no results other than a handful of business cards, which I started to follow up on. Well, the big surprise came about 3-4 months later when we got a phone call from what was then the industry-leading publication called InfoWorld. They said that they are doing a review of our software, which was both terrifying and exciting at the same time, because if InfoWorld didn't like your software, even if they liked it a little, you might as well shut the doors, go out of business. Nobody would ever buy your product after that. So we were scared. And then we waited and waited. We didn't know when the interview was coming out, but it came out. And on a scale of 1 to 10, we received a 9.3, which was the highest rating they had ever given a software product. The only other product to get a 9.3 was a word processor called WordPerfect, which no longer exists. So that for us took us from 15 or 16 copies a week to 600 copies a month, all because of some great PR. So that's how we jump-started the business. And because of that positive PR, and because of the fact that if InfoWorld liked our software, now all the distributors that we had been soliciting started to call up and place big orders. And that did not stop. Of course, the software was great. And so as people began to use it, it started to gain more and more momentum. And as a result of the same philosophy that I apply right now with Clientfolio, is as customers made suggestions for improvements, we were very quick to implement those suggestions and make sure that the product was really on top of what people needed.
Like, guys, are you listening to him? There's so much gold in there. Like to me, it stands out. Like, you were constantly planting seeds, and you didn't take no for an answer. Like, you just kept planting seeds, and eventually something just hatched. And it took longer than you expected, but at the same time, it went really fast when it happened. And I feel like that's almost often how it goes, especially in the beginning. Like, you try, and suddenly, like, boom, spike. And then you start again, try, and then spike again. I think it's incredible. Like, did you always have like that mindset where you just kept going, or even with your wife? Like, did you just like, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to do whatever it takes? Because a lot of people have fears, or like they're very scared of like going to other people and being like, hey, here's what I have. I think it's really good. Like, do you want to look at it, or do you even want to try it out? And you just did that. Like, you covered 1 million square. Like that's insane. Like, did you always have like that attitude?
Well, again, it's possibly one of my personality defects is that I get obsessed with things and get very passionate about things,
Mhm.
and sometimes ignoring other important things because I'm passionate about the one thing. And so when I decided to build this business, I had cut off all friendships. Basically, I had cut off all relationships with girlfriends, and I got my expenses down to the bare minimum. I basically had a car that I didn't have to pay for every month. I had a place to live, which was my house, which I had purchased. And so, for the most part, I didn't go to movies or take vacations. I didn't want to. I had no interest in any of those things because work was so exciting. Because making progress on my mission was really so much fun. And you know what? I didn't need results right away. I was conditioned after being a salesman for as many years as I had been. I was conditioned to wait for accounts to develop. So when I was selling semiconductors right before starting time slips, it would take 14 to 18 months for the work I did to show up in a commission check. And so, for me, I started this job with a 50+% pay cut. And I just was determined to make it work. And I just kept at it and kept at it for over a year. And then in month 14, I went from earning about $1,200 a month uh, in commissions to $34,000 a month at the age of 26. So, for me, it was really even more uh, reassuring that what I do makes sense for me. It may not make sense for others. I've heard people talk about life balance. I'm all about life imbalance. I like to get overly dedicated to the things I'm doing and support the heck out of them. And as a result, I can persist as long as it takes to make something work. Now, here's a very important point I want to make. It doesn't mean that I don't change direction. It doesn't mean, as they now use the word pivot, into a different place if I find that what I'm doing isn't working. I told you the story of how I started to advertise in major publications. We spent practically all of our ad budget to run 2 ads in PC Magazine, but it didn't work. But I didn't give up. I just pivoted into trying to figure out what would work. And I did that by analyzing the leads that came from that very expensive set of ads. And that told us to go after lawyers. And that's what we did.
So insane. I love the sentence where you just like, I'm going to persist until it works. Like that's so powerful because most people try and then they give up, or they
Yeah.
try and then it doesn't completely work, and then they do something else. And for you, it's like, yes, you pivot and you tweak and you look at the data, but you keep going. There's not even a way out, right? Like there's not even, because I have the same thing. Like there's not even a thought in my mind that this is not going to work, that I'm going to quit. Like it's just not there. And I
Right.
think that's kind of the second point where everything is a system. Like if
Right.
you have the thing in your mind, like, and you just keep looking at the data, like you can figure out the system eventually,
That's
especially
right.
if you hire a few cool people. Yeah.
Well, that's what engineering school did for me. I was always fascinated with electronics and electric circuits and electricity. As a little boy, I became obsessed with Thomas Edison, and it's possible that as a little boy, I would have been diagnosed with, who knows, ADD or
Mhm.
Asperger's, or I don't know what they would have called me. But the bottom line is that once I got a hold of something, I didn't let go until I was satisfied. So my mom had to go to the library and ask the librarian to please bring in more books on Thomas Edison because my son had read them all and wants more. And so the of course the librarian said, "I'm sorry, but that's all we have." So my mom then took me to New York, where I was able to go to the Manhattan or the New York Public Library, and there it was like striking gold. There I had a whole section of books on electricity and electronics and Thomas Edison, and I refused to leave. Just like, give them all to me now. And that was kind of how I was. And I'm not saying it's a good quality. I'm just saying that for me, I was able to aim it in a way so that it benefited me in my life.
But that's also interesting the way that you framed it, because you were like, your mom also didn't take no for an answer. Like, is that in your family or around the people around you?
Well, again, my dad was a big influence in me, and I watched as he went to work for a company that he didn't enjoy and decided to leave and start his own business. And my dad was basically an all-in type of guy as well. So when it came to, you know, hanging out with us kids, uh, there was no more movies. There was no more Chinese food on the weekends. He was starting a business, and he needed to grow that business, and he needed to find customers, and he actually enrolled us kids to help. So as a young man, I would go door to door or store to store to show my dad's products and get them placed inside the store and sell them. So you might say that I come from a background, an entrepreneurial background for sure, but the demonstration of persistence working was my dad and my mom, certainly. So my family did have an influence on that.
That's insane. And did you get like some people that were like, hey, that's not okay, or like people that called out your dad or your mom who were like, hey, your son like needs help, or something like that? Or did you not?
The opposite.
The opposite. Nice.
The opposite. People call up and say, you have an incredible kid. He just came in here, and I've turned down every salesman who's ever walked in here, but I just filled my showroom with the stuff from your company because of your son. And it was because I got excited. It was because I was passionate, because I knew my product cold. There wasn't a question you could ask me that I didn't know the answer to when it came to my products.
I feel like that what you just said there is so crucial, especially on like closing calls with clients. Like, you're often so caught up in your mind, and you haven't really practiced that well. You think you've practiced, but you didn't really. Like, did you really go through all the scenarios? Did you really know how you really justify the cost in every area of your life? Because oftentimes, like, what you do with your client justifies its cost like 100x. But if you don't see it, you can't even share that properly, or you can't share the passion, and you will always be scared. And not just that, like, all the objections, all the potential things that your client can come up with. Have you really created the best program ever? Like, are there things you can do better? Like, are there things you can improve? Do you have like what do you think is the success rate of your clients? If you don't think it's 100%, what can you improve about it? And then if you go through all those sequences, then when that person comes on the call, or when you go into a room with somebody, like, you're so much more confident, because whatever they throw at you, you've already thought about it. And I think that's a big thing. And that also includes like for beliefs and values and things that you think about in life and your habits. Like, think those things through, because they will have an impact like every single year. Like, it just keeps going. Okay, that makes sense. So then eventually you transitioned, like you eventually sold your company. Like, how did that go? And like, what went through your mind? And like, what was like the steps in between? Like, were there specific scaling issues you came like that happened, or were it just somebody that was like, hey, take my money? Or like, what happened?
Well, I mean, so I had never started a company before of that scale. I had started other small things. Like, I had a rock band in high school and learned a lot about business doing that. But when it came to scaling a multi-million-dollar company, I was really on my own. There's no such thing back then as a business coach. And so I had no real coaches. I had a mentor who was my attorney. My attorney and I became very, very dear friends. And he was far more than an attorney to me, because I came to him with things, and I asked him what he thought. And he was older than me and very experienced. And so he had seen much of what I had been through. But what I had, the struggles that I had were what has been aptly named entrepreneur's disease. So entrepreneur's disease is when, as the entrepreneur, you think you are the only one who could do anything really, really well. So, for example, I was doing all the sales for the company through seven figures, but it got to the point where now I had to run a company and I couldn't do all the sales anymore. So I had to bring in another salesperson to train And I used to cringe as they lost a sale because I know I could have saved that sale if it were me. So, but I had to learn to delegate, and I had to learn to allow people to find their own path to get the job done that I hired them to do. So that was a real learning curve for me. And then I had to deal with other issues as the company grew. We were running out of space every 18 months. We had to keep expanding and keep moving the company in some cases. So I had to learn how to do that. And then, of course, I had to understand the infrastructure of a company. Back then, there was no internet, but we had a file server, and that file server I built it myself. I built it from components, and then we ran, an Ethernet system on that file server. So we were able to wire up over 100 computers to that file server, and that ran our whole company. That was basically the blood pumping through the body was our little Ethernet system and file server. And even finding the software to run a company from 2 to 100 plus stations was a challenge. And we had gone through several different types of software. And so I guess what it came down to is that I just approached every problem as another stepping stone to getting to where I want. So I would, because, I mean, imagine if, there's that old saying that, if you have a child and that new child begins to start walking and they fall down, you don't say, come on, you little dummy, stand up. What's wrong with you? You encourage that child and you keep helping them. And even as they fail over and over again, eventually they're going to walk and run. Well, that is the same as life. That's the same as business. There is no difference. You have to stumble a lot before you could stand, and you have to stand for a while and do more until you can walk and run. And that's really what business is about in many ways.
So much to unpack right there. Maybe to quickly summarize, it seems to me that you start off with a really good mindset, like your mom and your the people around you, and your own personality, like you had that going for you. And then what you did is you created this really cool product. And then when you put that product out in the world, it seems like you were looking at the audience, like the target audience, like who does this work best for? And then you probably kept tweaking and making it better. And then you just found a way to, how can I put it out there more? Like lead generation, how can I put it out there more? And that was PR for you. That was like all these different avenues, and you kept planting seeds, and you went to people in person. And eventually you had your big break with the big company that was rating you with a 9.3 or 9.4. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, you started scaling. You'd be like, okay, we have something that seems to work. Like, how can we? And I think you put everything back into the business. I assume, like you were, like you kept obsessing about it. Like it wasn't really, oh, okay, now we have some result. Now we have some success. Let me quit. Like you kept going. I assume, like you just kept going and going and going until you eventually were like, what did I create? And then you kept looking at the data, solutions, people around you, building a team, like letting people fall and help them get back up, and like until you eventually had something really, really impressive. And I think the time just passed by also.
Exactly. And then eventually I started to get attention. I mean, all of a sudden, when I say all of a sudden, I mean, it's like overnight success. It takes 10 years to be an overnight success. Well, right. All of a sudden, about 3 years later, I started, hearing from these organizations like Inc. magazine, and they had nominated me for Entrepreneur of the Year. And then, eventually I was written up in, mainstream publications, for the work that we have done, which I didn't think was very extraordinary because after all, we were going much slower than all these other companies. We didn't have venture capital. In fact, I was terrified of anybody coming along and trying to make an investment because I didn't understand finance at the time at all. So I shied away from ever taking money from anyone because I never wanted to lose control or even lose ownership of my own company. And my partner and I made a deal that neither one of us would ever invest more than the other could, so that our share remains the same. So, sometimes when limitations become strengths later if you are able to use them the right way. So my limitation was I didn't understand money or finance. So I didn't take any from anybody, which meant that we had to run the company from a checkbook. Now you might say, well, that's kind of dumb. On the other hand, when we sold it, we kept all the money. We didn't have to pay out investors or have any big finance issues. We just basically sold the company for cash, and my partner and I, we paid out some bonuses, of course, and we put the cash in our pocket because it was really our company, and we had built it with our own sweat and blood, and grown it to the size it was, and then attracted the right types of buyers, created an auction environment where people were bidding on the company, and we sold it. That's simple.
Because what made you decide to actually sell it? Were you like, it's time to move on to the next phase in my life, or did you want to retire? Or like, what went through your mind to create such an environment?
There were probably two critical things that brought us to the decision to sell. And one of them was my partner, who is my dearest of dear friends today. I just was the best man at his wedding last weekend. And my partner came to me and said, how long do I have to do this? And I said, why? Are you not enjoying yourself? He goes, well, it's kind of like a job. I come to work every day. I run this team of developers, and we produce software. And I really did get what he was saying. He was, before that, he had lots of different things he was doing. Before our company, he was writing software for other companies. So he had lots of variety. Now he has very little variety. And he asked me, he goes, well, is there a way that I can back away from the company? And, and of course, he knew that the company was now worth many millions of dollars. And so I said, well, look, maybe the right thing to do is to buy you out. And so now, for the first time in, I think it was 7 years, I started asking if VCs, venture capitalists, would like to come in and take a look and maybe buy my partner's half of the company. And I did that. I invited them in, and that reinforced all of my feelings of how much I hate VC people, and how much I felt as if they were there just to exploit us. So I turned to Neil after weeks of research and said, screw it. I'm not going to let you take a tiny amount of money compared to what this company is worth. Let's just position it for sale sometime in the next year to 2 years. And he was fine with that. So, we started working on what does it take to sell a company. And one of the things, which was kind of a wake-up call, was that you had to have a profitable company to sell a company. Well, we were marginally profitable because we spent so much effort plowing our profits back into the company. And the reason we did that is to avoid paying taxes. I mean, look, every good company needs as much fuel as it can to run as fast as possible. Well, why would you give money to the government when you could spend it on your own marketing? So we were doing things that are, I wouldn't call it illegal, but probably on the edge. We were paying for advertising that 6 months or a year in advance of using it because we knew we could dispose of cash that way. So we were running the company pretty much to the line until we made the decision to shift into being profitable. And over the course of the next year, we were able to show 18 to 22% profitability, because we really were that profitable. And then it became relatively easy. We attracted several buyers. We set up an auction where two buyers competed against each other to bid up the price, and then a deal came along that I believed was perfect for us, and my partner agreed, and we then sold the company.
That must have been amazing, right? That feeling when you succeeded, like maybe that day even.
I remember, I'll never forget the day. It was actually April 15th, 1994, when my then wife came into my office crying with a handful of pregnancy tests and announced that we were now pregnant with our child, our first child. And at that same time, a FedEx delivery came with a basically an offer, the offer at the same time. So it was like, wow. And by the way, of course, I had to pay my taxes that day too, which all of a sudden I didn't mind paying as much after that FedEx envelope arrived. So all of these things kind of came together at the same time. And it then became a wild adventure. At that point, we agreed to sell the company. My team and I moved to Dallas, Texas, to help the new company transition us into their organization, which we did. And then later, after I grew my brand and my product line significantly over the course of the next 2 years, they asked me if I would stay on and be the chief operating officer for the whole company in the US, of which I said yes. So it was a great time. It was a very exciting time. And, again, my life is filled with blessings, and that was certainly one of them.
Were there things that you had in mind when that check came in, or like when you saw the money in your bank account? Were there like things in mind, like I'm gonna take a holiday, I'm gonna take a break, or like what went through your mind?
Well, I'll tell you. So what happened was I got a phone call like 2 days later from the president of the Beverly National Bank in Beverly, Massachusetts. He said, "Mitch, we got a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He goes, "Well, $5 million just came into your account, and you're throwing my books off pretty badly here. What are you going to do with the money?" And I said, "Okay, sorry about that, I guess, but let's get it transferred over to a brokerage account so it won't screw up your books." He goes, "Yeah, that's fine. And by the way, congratulations. I know how hard you guys have worked to do this." So it was that moment in time when I realized it was really real. The money was there. At least the first down payment was there. And that was exciting. So, and so what I did is I took my wife to the mall that night, and I said, "Anything you want, whatever you could think of, fur coats, diamonds, I don't care." And we walked through the mall for 2 hours, and we got an ice cream, and that's the only thing we bought. It was a fun night.
That's insane, right? Like you think that you would then buy everything, but probably at that moment you realize I don't need all those things.
I don't need all this stuff. All I really needed was the security of knowing that my financial future is now guaranteed. See, that was, to me, that's what I grew. I grew up in a middle-class family where we never had enough money. And it was very unsettling to go from a place of never having enough money and always worrying about money, to deciding that I would alleviate this problem if I could, once and for all. And that's what I encourage every one of your listeners to do too, to have the mindset that no matter how much it takes, no matter how hard it's going to be, if I can dedicate my life to solving this one problem now, I can enjoy it for the rest of my life. And that was my attitude back then.
Wow. So impressive. Like I'm not even close to your level, but I had something very similar when I was in Mexico, where I was living for the last 3 months in Playa del Carmen. We were living in this secluded, gated community. Like there was this river, ocean next to me. Like everything was really close. There were these cenotes next to me. I had like a private chef. Like pretty much we had. I was living there with like a great friend, and we pretty much had everything that we needed. Like everything was taken care of. Like I had private MMA, like a private professional fighter teaching me, and we had like salsa lessons, and they all came to my place, so I didn't even need to do a thing. And I actually realized it was empty. Like it was really fun, but it was empty at the same time. Like I really didn't need all of that. And yeah, now I'm doing everything myself.
Of course. Well, again, this is the phases that people go through. I'm trying right now, helping my daughter move through a phase where she's struggling, and she has a job, she has a good job, but she's going through growing pains right now, and of course she's in Boston, and today, Wednesday, June 30th, 2021, there's a heat wave in Boston, and so she's the heat's making her miserable. She has to work from home, and her computer is breaking, and I'm listen, that's what this is this is life. This is what happens. You just make it to the other side. So, and that's all I'm trying to do is help her make it to the other side. That's all I can do. That's my job as dad.
Because you have one daughter, or you have?
I have one daughter. Yep, I have one daughter, and we're very close. My ex-wife was unfortunately very, very sick with alcoholism and left the family when my daughter was 8. So I took full custody and raised her. And as a result, she is the closest person in the world to me. And so we have a great relationship.
I love how much you care. But was it like if this is too personal, like don't answer, but was it like difficult for you to be so close and like care so much for this person, but at the same time be like the dad and like maybe some discipline in there, or like trying to be like a good dad? Like what have you experienced, like looking back as a daily guy? You keep optimizing and tweaking things, and you probably thought a lot about this.
Well, again, it's a passage of life. You start a family, you raise your kids, and then you have to deal with whatever comes up. And nobody wants to see what happened happen. But my attitude about life is that everything happens for a reason, and the reason is generally not visible at the time it's happening, but later in life when you look back and say, you know what, that was a terrible problem, it was an incredible hardship, but in many ways it was a blessing at the same time. And for me it was a blessing, even though it was difficult and it was emotionally draining in every way. It gave me the chance to bond with my child at a level I never could have any other way, and allowed me to be even more resilient to the issues and problems of life, which has served me well over the years.
I think that's incredible. Okay, maybe going back to where you were. So you got this pretty amazing job, and I think you did some amazing things back there. Like what went through your mind? Like why did you want to work again? And like what made you keep going and not just retire or do whatever hobbies, or like go golfing, or like what went through your mind?
Well, I tried that. I retired for five or 6 weeks, and it was like the most boring period of my life. And again, I like to be in the game, and you can't be in the game if you're retired. So even now, as you know, I'm not retired. I'm 67 years old. I'm still publishing software, which is at some point I hope we get to talk about. I have software now that I literally created from scratch with my team over the last 2 years. And I'm very gratified to see so many coaches now using it because it solves the problem that I had. And I figured if I had this problem, a lot of other people have it too. And so for me, this was the typical pathway that an entrepreneur takes. I have a very active coaching practice. I realized I needed coaching software to help manage the practice. So I started buying and subscribing and trying all these different products. And for me, they were all a big fail. And what it came down to is that none of them really did just the part that I wanted. I didn't want a program that did everything because I don't need everything. I didn't want a product that was hard to learn and required endless videos of trying to figure out, because I have a short attention span. I want to learn something in 10 minutes or less. The other thing is that even though I might be able to afford it, I don't want to spend $175 a month for software just because I have more than 1 or 2 clients. Some of these products are inexpensive for 1 or 2 clients, but if you go beyond 3, all of a sudden now you're paying a lot of money. I just couldn't find anything that fit any element of how this would work. So I did what most entrepreneurs do when they hit a problem, try to solve it and can't, they invent their own solution. And so that's what Clientfolio is. It is my answer to coaches who need an incredibly powerful system for a very low price that's super easy to learn. 10-minute learning curve, less than $20 a month. and you have as many clients, unlimited notes, unlimited sessions, homeworks, whatever you want. There's no limitation at all for $20 a month. That to me was what I wanted to bring to this world. Maybe my last hurrah before I literally retire. But to me, it was super important to get it. And I'm so energized by this project. I feel like I'm back at Time Slips all over again.
I want to show it to them in a little bit, because I think it can be really useful for the people that are right at that stage where they need that combination of solutions instead of like going through all these different tools.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've definitely like saw that problem myself. But maybe like first, like so what went through your mind? Like were you actively looking at solving ideas, or was it more like, this is frustrating, this needs to be solved? Is anybody else doing it? No, let me do it, and then everything else flowed from there. Or like what went through your mind for you to finally do it? Because I assume that you were already very active and busy in your own coaching practice.
Yeah.
That was very successful. So what made you take on another task in solving this problem?
Well, I knew I had to solve it. So I did it probably in the same way that you might have, which is I started employing over, existing products. Like I had Google Sheets for my productivity tracking and for goal setting. I used Evernote for taking notes. I used, obviously, I had a mind mapping tool that I used for working with clients. I had another tool that I used for building flow charts, and now I had to keep track of all these different things. And then at the end of a session, I had to extract all of the information I had put into all these different places and then craft a single email every single session and send it to the client, and including the homework for our next session. Well, it got to the point I was spending half an hour after every session. And so realistically, I'm thinking to myself, I need some help. I need some coaching software. And that's when I started searching. And then I told you what happened when I started searching. I couldn't find anything that would consolidate all of this into one place and allow me to learn it quickly and do it inexpensively, with the bonus of incorporating my personal productivity tools that make my sessions run more smoothly. So, and you don't need to use that part of the system, but I've built accountability questions and I've built goal setting directly into my product for those who choose to use it with their clients. You don't need to. The system works great without it, and it'll get the job done no matter what. But if you start using the tools, think about it. Here's this guy, he's been coaching for 30 years. What are his best practices? Well, they're built into the system. You don't even have to learn them. They're right there. And in fact, I even had a library of accountability questions that I've collected over the years that I have used session after session. So, and of course you could write your own and put them in the library too. So for me, it was really about me saving time, going from 30 minutes of admin per session to 5 minutes of admin per session, and getting better results with clients, creating a more beautiful client report. And remember, every time you touch a client, you are leaving an impression. So, I showed you earlier what the homework email looks like.
Mm.
The look of that email says a lot about who sent it. The fact that it's beautifully formatted, that my logo's up top, that it has everything in there that you would want to communicate to your client, including a recording of the session, the date of the next session, any files that you've attached and wanted to work on. I mean, all your notes, your all the accountability questions and answers, all of your stats presented in graphic format, it's all there in one single email. So, I mean, for heaven's sakes, who wouldn't want to make use of that? That's the way I think about it.
Let me show that real quick, because that email is super, super powerful. I can even go into the software if you want to.
Sure.
Okay. So maybe for me, like, because I'm signed up to this software right now too. Where could I find that intro video? Because that might show very quickly what.
Go to FAQs, FAQs, and they are right there. That's the getting started video. Now, I have to redo this because I did this when the software was first released, and there are many new features in here. But if you like, if you could give me access, I could do a quick demo, a 5-minute demo for you.
100%. Why don't you?
Okay, so
let me...
tell me how to enable screen sharing. Oh, share.
Screen share? Yeah. See if you can do it.
Okay, let's take a look. Share screen. And okay, and I want to share. I don't see. Oh, I think it's here. Let me check.
Because for me, like I can actually remember like a very specific moment when I was. I had my first big client, which was and this was back when I was doing mindset coaching. I had my first big client for. She was the head of artificial intelligence for the biggest bank in New Zealand, and she run a team of like 150 to 200 people.
Yeah.
And I remember like after every session, she had IQ of like 170, like super smart.
Yeah.
And I had so many notes after every session. And at that point, I wasn't at the stage where I had like almost systematized things or like had PDFs already for like answers or like an FAQ or like pretty much everything I showed you before. And I remember like having to create it every time, like a separate sheet and separate questions. And like, even though I made a little bit of a template, like it still took so long. And if I would have that software back then, that would have saved me so much.
Well, that's why I created it. Now, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Hold on. Why is it showing me? It's just showing the desktop. Where is my browser window? Interesting.
Good one.
Wow.
I'm not able to switch screens right here.
Let me do that. I'm going to stop screen sharing and reshare. And let's see if I can do it this way. Share a screen. And 1 minute here. Google Chrome. It's so funny. It wants to display my screen one, but it kind of won't. I wonder. Well, I don't know why it's not showing the browser. That's so weird. Okay, so I mean, you can see my cursor here, but when
when you press share screen, you see video file or you see share screen, right? Like I assume that you press on share screen.
I am pressing share screen.
And then what happens is you get the screen sharing tips, and then from that point on, you want to double click on the entire screen, and then press share. Is that what you're doing?
I am. I'm just going to try. Maybe I've never. It seems, I hate to say it, but every time I use StreamYard, I always have a problem. That's why I prefer Zoom. But anyway, I'm going to try this. Let's see, Google Chrome app. Maybe this will do it. Let me know. I don't know if you can see it yet. Hold on. Seems like it's queuing up. Wow, this is really slow.
Yeah, seems like nothing is happening.
Yeah. That's too bad. Okay, well, maybe not then. I mean, I've screened in millions of cases, and this is very frustrating because.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. How about I do it this way? Share screen. Do you want me to quickly take them through the first part of like the video, because I think that shares, to me at least.
The video is too long to watch. We could post.
No, I mean just like the general idea of the whole thing.
Sure, if you want, you could start to do that. But yeah, go back a bit. So that is the main screen. What you're looking at now is where your sessions reside. So you'd be sitting in front of the screen while you're coaching your client. And again, you see where your cursor is? There's like a little red arrow to the right. Mm-hmm. So if you don't use accountability questions, you could click that arrow and all that goes away. So what we have here are all your past sessions stacking up on the left, all of your notes in a word processor style notepad, all your homework assignments below that. And again, every aspect of this is controllable by you, the coach. I don't know if you noticed, but when you get started with the software, you can even change the terminology. So if you call the people in your organization consultants or practitioners or partners, you could change all the terminology. If you have clients or patients or whatever it is you have, you could change the terminology. So once you're here and you're setting up your session, there's a few things that are going on. One is the local time and the session time are ticking away on little taxi cab meters up top, right? And then so you have an instant, you don't have to look at your watch or a clock on the wall, or you just have access to the session time so you know where you're at. And then finally, let's move a little further down the video and see if we can get to the next screen. Yeah, so now at the bottom here, what you have is where you drop the people that you want to send this to. Now, your client gets it automatically when you click send homework, the red button all the way at the lower left. But you can CC any number of people you want. So where this becomes super useful is that if you're coaching a group or a team, as in group coaching, now you can run your group coaching session, take your notes, have homework, and then drop all of that into this system, drop the emails of everybody in the group coaching session into that CC assignments, and now everybody gets the same email. Same with recording from today's session. That's a Zoom link with password. You just drop it right in, and that is transmitted through the homework as you've seen when we displayed it before. And then now where it says attach on the lower left, you could add as many files as you want, spreadsheets, PDFs, whatever you need, you just add it there. And then you get to choose what you want to include in your homework. So as I said, this is an older version that you're looking at. The newer version has more options for inclusion. It gives you more features as well. So keep going, and I think we show at some point stats.
Yes, so software is super simple, right? Like it's incredibly useful. Like and this is not even the best version, but it's like just follow the notes, like add everything in the assignments, homework, links, and then like everything will show up in that PDF that I showed you in a second, which I can pull up after again. But yeah, it's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Right, and I think if you go a little bit further on the video, I wanted to see if we could show the stats part of the screen. Keep going. There we go. So after every session, I like to leave this towards the end of the session. Some people do it in the beginning. What we do is we collect our goals or stats. Now, where it says sales and site visits and customers, you can see the pencil. The pencil means you could edit the names of any of those stats, and you can record them every week, and they stack up on the right. And if you keep scrolling through the video, you'll see what that looks like. There we go. So we can do charts and graphs as a result of the data that you collect. And this, by the way, gets right on the homework as well. So at this point, if you could show the homework email that I sent to you before, yeah, that one. So this is what your client receives. This is really the entire session. And so here we have the date of the session up top, the homework assignment, all the things you want your clients to do, the notes of the session right below that. And again, everything here you could choose to include or exclude. The accountability questions are all there and their answers. And then finally, the stats. Again, you could choose to include or exclude any piece of this. But if you do include it, it's going to show up on your homework, we call the client report, for every single client. And you get, of course, the recording of the session, the next meeting date, and any attachments you might have added.
Yes, so it's, especially if you're a one-on-one if you coach and you haven't systematized everything yet, and you mainly do one-on-one sessions, like this tool is so incredibly easy, because you fill in the information during the session or after very quickly, and then you just send it to them. This enters into an email, and then they get a nicely branded overview of what you covered. And then you were also talking about, you can see all these things in sequence. So if you have 10 sessions, you can see everything that happened. And it's very easy accessible. And then there were also some new cool features that we were talking about before that seemed super promising.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want me to show right here? Or do you want to talk a bit about the new features, or like what?
Well, go back, as you said, go back a minute to that screen there. So just go over to, you don't have any clients yet, so we can't really demonstrate it. But go to FAQs. Let's just take a look at that. FAQs will, yeah, as you can see, we can basically, every question that I've ever gotten is actually answered through the FAQs. Now go back up to the top again, and now click on questions. So this is up at the top, the blue button next to FAQs. There we go. So now what we have is the ability to create question categories, and now questions for each category. So how can we use this? Let's say you have a course, and let's say you're doing group coaching, and let's say every group, every session, you're taking them through a different module of your course. Well, go to Manage Accountability Questions, click on that. At this point, you could literally set up a question for every, or series of questions for every module in your course. And now, as you start your session, you could select the questions for that week, run accountability on those sessions, on those questions, and then next week do a different module. So this becomes a very, very powerful way of keeping your client focused on whatever it is that you are helping them accomplish. Now, these are the questions that you're looking at now. These come with the system. These are the questions I've used over the years, and some people find them quite valuable. Others add their own, which is even better.
Yeah, super powerful. And do you need them to do all these questions before the next session, or like how?
I only choose 2 or 3 questions per session.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and if they don't answer it, I write that down. I said, I didn't have time to get to that this week. Let's keep it for next week, and so we do.
Yeah, I really, really like that. It keeps people accountable, because oftentimes also what happens is throughout, say, 6, 10, 12 weeks of coaching, you forget how much progress that you've made, or how many things that you didn't do, all the small things that you forgot that really make the difference. Because go ahead.
What motivated me, particularly with stats, what motivated me was the fact that many, many years ago, I had a client that came to the end of our time together, and I said, look, I think we've been doing some great work together. Do you want to continue? And they said to me, not really. I don't know if we really accomplished anything at all. No kidding, really? So I said, well, tell you what, let me put something together and I'll send it back to you, and we'll have a chat. So if I would have had this software, I would have said, oh, really? And just popped open the stats and said, okay, well, when we first started coaching, your revenue was this and now it's that. When we first started coaching, the number of customers you had was this and now it's that. So in other words, everything that we worked on has grown and increased, and now you want to stop. Okay, no problem. As long as you understand that working together, we have accelerated your progress. In about 6 weeks, we've taken you about a year into the future when it came to progress. And if you feel like continuing, I'm here. And if you're not, that's fine too. So for me, the stats is a double win, because number one, it helps my client really stay on top of what goals that we're setting and making sure that we reach them. And it's accountability for me as a coach. If I'm not making progress, if my client's not making progress,
right,
I don't deserve to be their coach.
And that's so key, right? Like the whole data concept and really tracking everything. It's so crucial, because people just forget. Like, yep. I've had the same experience. Like, it's like 14 weeks in, and they don't see all the tiny things that they did, and that they are pretty much a completely different person. Not just that, but they added like 10K a month to the income, yep. And they don't see that. And if you can actually show them, or not even that, but even if they are aware that they're tracking things, then they don't forget, or they don't assume, or they don't even convince themselves that they weren't really. Because oftentimes it's scary to like keep investing or whatever it is for some people. And if they actually see in your system, for example, or we do it through Google Sheets, and we might check out your system too, which I'm actually very curious about. I'm definitely going to explore that. But that you actually see, like, here's what you did, like boom, 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 boom. Here's the progress that you've made. And that makes such a big difference, especially if they just keep reinforcing in the mind, like, hey, I'm actually making progress.
Yep.
Maybe the last thing, like, are you working a lot on this software, or do you have like a team, or like what went through your mind after you've gone through all these things? And there's so many things that we didn't even get to with the whole Tony Robbins example and stuff like that. But like, what went through your mind when you started this thing, where you were like, hey, I want to create this, but I don't want to work that much, or I want to create this and I'm going to be as obsessive again, or I'm going to be very systematic about who I hire so that I don't need to do that much? Or like, what went through your mind this possibly final time?
Well, I've been working on building a team overseas now for many years. So I have a team of people in India who have been working for me and with me and for my clients. So when I work with a client, if we decide that they need a custom app of some sort,
Nice.
I call in my team and we build it. And so when I said to my team, I said, here's a wireframe of what I'm thinking. Here's a full spec that I've written. What do you think it'll take to get this done? And they said, oh, probably about 3 months. And in my mind, I said, yeah, that means about a year. So, and it did. It took more than a year. So, because again, once you get the first iteration, you refine that further. So we did a lot of work on the interface to make sure that it was as simple and easy to use as possible. It's not what I would call beautiful, like some of these other products that focused on making the product beautiful. We focused on making the product functional and easy. Later, at some point in the future, we'll probably bring in a UI designer and make it a little bit more attractive. But it's really not my priority. So I haven't had complaints from clients who say, well, the software works really, really well. It's super easy to use, but I wish it were prettier. I just haven't had anybody come through and say that. But for my purposes, I always would like to improve it. And
I think that's all key, especially with some of the older websites. You'd be like, this sucks. This looks absolutely disgusting the way that this whole thing looks. It's so outdated. But then you look at the numbers on the back end and you are like, oh my God, you guys have like gold right here. And that's really it, like functionality and performance over like prettiness. And like, because at the end of the day, all that you really need is if you can communicate effectively with the right person, that what you have is the right thing for them. And they use it and they try it and they're like, yes, this is actually the right thing for me. They don't care if it's pretty or however you deliver. They just care about the end result, which is them getting whatever they wanted to do done. And I think that's really key. And I think that's what you've done right here.
Well, we focused for several months on making the homework report, the client report, look beautiful, like you shown on screen when you demonstrated it. I mean, that could have just looked like a regular Gmail email message. But no, we built we built word processing tools into the system that show up on homework because we want you as a coach to make a great impression on your clients with a very highly thought out and perfectly formatted homework message, the secret here, as I told you next week, that homework will soon be interactive. So that clients can literally click on the homework and ask the coach a question while the homework is on their screen. So it's pretty cool. And everything continuously is evolving here as well.
So what do you see for the future? Like, do you see any specific elements that you're like, oh, if we can get that in there, that would be amazing? Or like upgrades or like things that you're thinking about that would be like amazing?
Well, we have a product roadmap, and the product roadmap takes us out about 90 days right now. That's really all I want to plan for. And we have things that are what I would call incremental improvements. Like I want to improve the word processor element of it. Right now, it's good. It's not as good as I think it could be. So the team is going to start working on an enhanced word processing system for our notes and homework windows. Little things like that. Right now though, it has all the features that I think it needs. And as I said earlier, if there are suggestions that a user has and they send them to me and they fit the prime directive, which is super easy to use and super easy to learn and saves the coach time, then I'll include it. If I've had suggestions that take us down the rabbit hole, and I don't want to go there. I don't want to add, as I said earlier, I don't want to add courses. There's plenty of learning management systems that do courses far better than I could. I don't want to add accounting, such as credit card processing. I don't want to add, building my own calendar when we link directly into the Google Calendar system. Why would I need any more than that? But there are companies that when they take this task on, they decide to build all
Yeah.
those things themselves. And that just complicates everything and makes things harder. Now I have to learn all these extra things I don't want or need. So my goal, make it easy, make it work quickly, make it very, very useful for the coach and super productive for the client who receives the the client reports as well.
And I think the final thing to say is that there's a nuance between making it really beautiful and really pretty, yet it's already out there. You can already use it. Stop waiting that long.
That's
Yet at
right.
the same time, make it really good. And it's just nuance.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Is there, like before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to share? Anything else that you're like, hey, this might be a good tip, advice, like something that you're like, maybe check this out. All the links, by the way, to the software is in the description. All the links to his websites, all in the description, so check them out. Is there anything else you want to end with?
Well, no, not really. I think we covered quite a bit. In fact, this was quite a long interview, which is great.
Yeah.
I don't mind at all. But for those of you who are thinking of trying out the software, just go to the page listed below and click on the link. And the sales page tells the story. You know, I feel as if telling the story was super important, and that's what the sales page does. And you know, if it's a fit for what you're doing, you know, spend $1. It only cost $1. Give it a try.
There's so many really beautiful things right there. I can't help but share this. Like again, like try to create a business where everything almost is effortless. Like you don't need to explain it. The sales page explains it. You don't need to do all these things separate. The software does that for you.
That's
Try to make it as effortless as possible. Stop being so inefficient. And with that said, yeah, Mitch, thank you so much. Like, really appreciate this. Check out the software down below, and yeah, go to this website. Like, Mitch is amazing. And yeah, Mitch, thank you so much for doing this.
My
and
pleasure.
everybody, have an amazing day. Yeah, see you in the next interview.